Hello. Today we're going to be taking a look at the art style of Unturned's buildings and how we can more closely match them, keep the art style consistent, the dimensions, and make it so that when we bring your stuff into the game, it will fit in really nicely with everything else. So to start off, I'm going to open up Blender, and this all assumes that you already have some experience with Blender, you know what you're doing. I won't be explaining the hotkeys and stuff like that, but there's a lot of really good guides out there for those sorts of things if you're just getting into it from the start. I'm going to start off with this cube. This is what we're going to make the main building out of. I'm going to call it building. I like to rename the vertex groups as well, although I don't think that has any impact on when you import it. And then I like to have it so that there's about 5 meters. Well, I think for most objects it's exactly 5 meters. You can see in the bottom left there, it says exactly how much it is. And so I like to have 5 meters underneath the ground, and this way when you're in the editor and you're moving it around, if you put it on a hill or something, you have that little bit of extra room to work with. Then I'll scale this up a bit, make it big enough that we can have some stuff in here. And I kind of want to cover, maybe we'll have a door, a window, some sort of garage, a window kind of near the roof, sort of like in the grocery store. Then at the back we'll have a staircase going up to the top floor, and we'll have the second floor out on the roof. And so then that way we'll cover every sort of building design that's in the game right now, and that way I can show you some tips of how I do it and how we can speed things up. So to start off, we'll probably make the walls here. So I think, yeah, it's off by default. It's on by default. You want to turn off auto merge editing. So in that way we can make these loop cuts, bring them to the side, and make them half a meter away from the edge. And so in this way, all the walls will be the same width. All the walls in the game are 0.5 meters wide, so we've got that here now. And now we'll start with the doors and the windows. So generally when placing these in the building, I like to have them about a meter away from whatever they're up against. Sometimes this changes based on symmetry or making it look nice, or maybe just having something that looked too wide. But in this case, I think that should work fine. So we'll make another loop cut here. And so I know this can look a bit confusing if you don't know the same thought process I'm going through. Here I'll actually raise this up as well, so that way you don't see the grid lines. I think there's something in the menu here to disable them too. Oh, there it is. Bring it back down. But the idea here is that we have the outer wall, and then here's the left side of the door frame. We'll make another loop cut and move it over by 2.5 meters. And so all the doors in the game are 2.5 meters wide. This is important because you can place the doors in the game, they snap to the door frame. And so then by making it so that all the doors are the same size, it'll always fit in there. And then we'll have the window over here, so I'm going to make a couple more loop cuts, or I'll put that one over here. And so then now we have the space for the door here and space for the window here. Then to start going from this direction, I think we're going to put a garage on that side of the house, or whatever this building is. So we have that back 1 meter, and then the garage is 4 meters wide. All these measurements are actually in the objects documentation. I've got that open on my other monitor right now, so I don't think you can see it. But that should cover all these in case it's going to be kind of tricky going back to the video to look them all up again. And then I think probably we'll have a 4 meter wide window up towards the roof on that side. That way things just don't get too complicated. And maybe we'll actually make the house a little bit wider to make it so that this window is more obviously different from the door. And then over here, this is where we'll put the staircase. We'll have the staircase going up from the ground floor to the top floor. And so usually with hallways like that, I like to have it so that it's about 2.5 meters wide. So for example, in the bunker, or what's it called, the missile silo on the Russia map, the hallways on that spiraling down, those are actually 2.5 meters wide. The subway tunnels, I think that's an example of another case where there's the 1 meter of space beside the doors, so those passageways are actually 4.5 meters wide. So there's some room for doing whatever you like there, but as a general rule, 2.5 meters works well. So over here we'll put 2.5 meters away. So this will be the staircase area. And then we'll make another wall. And then we'll probably need some space at the top and the bottom for landings. So I think at the bottom we're going to have it so that there's no door to it or anything. It'll just be exposed. So we can make another loop cut here. We'll move it over here and move it back by 2.5 meters. So now there's this 2.5 meter wide gap here. And then to balance that out on the top floor, as another example, we're going to have the landing area with a door frame. Although this looks like it might be a bit steep, so I think we will widen this out a little bit more, which has now made this window quite wide. So we'll probably turn this into a double window. To do that, I'll put the loop cut on the left, move it over to the right, divide it by 2, and there we go. Now we got another 1 meter wide spacer there. And so I don't think I mentioned that usually the pillars that are in the windows, usually those are 1 meter wide if you have them in the window. Although there's a lot of buildings that have wider ones. Just I wouldn't go thinner than 1 meter for that. Okay, so I think we have our layout now. And so I'm going to start raising up these walls. This is where it's definitely a little bit tricky to spectate without knowing the what's going through my head. But there we go. Oops, I missed that. And so you can see here we've got a bit of a floor layout, the orange areas being the walls, the garage door there, the main door there. And we'll raise these up by 1 meter. And so usually, even if there are no windows, I like to do these steps just so that way later if I decide to go back and add a window, it's really easy. And that's one thing you might be thinking looking at this, is this seems like a whole lot of work having all these extra loop cuts and stuff. But really it just means it's super easy to change later. So now I'm going to deselect these, which is where our window is going to be. And I think we're good to go to raise these up. I'm going to raise them up by 1.75 meters this time. And so that's for the doorways. So you can see over here, this doorway is now 2.75 meters tall. And so that's the height of all the doorways in the game. I think we're good to create a face here. And we'll just flip it around to make things a bit easier. And now I think we can go ahead and raise it up one more. Let me just, yeah, so the garage is 3.75 meters tall, so we'll raise it all up again. Although, right, we were going to have a window over here too, weren't we? So we'll select all that, and we'll deselect that for the window, and raise it up by 1. So now we can go back in here and add some faces to these. Flip these around as well. And add the top of the garage, top of this window. Alright, there we go. And then the space on top of these is 0.5 meters, I think. We can just double check that by measuring the distance to the ground. And again, in the bottom left there, you can see it's 4.25 meters. So this should be good to go. We'll just add some faces to the bottom of these areas here. All right. Okay, so I think we should be good to go to start on the second floor now. We'll go back and we'll add the frames for all these later. So all the floors in the game are 0.5 meters tall as well. So we're going to raise it up by 0.5 meters and then select this these inner faces going along where the floor is going to be, because we don't want a bunch of extra stuff being drawn in there. And to speed this up, we're just going to move this over and connect that there. There we go. That's one thing that can cause a bit of trouble sometimes, is you want to go back and double check that at the bottom where you have these extra loop cuts, you want to go and add those to the roof area as well. That should be pretty quick. There we go. And we don't have any of those here or here, so we're good to go. And then I think I might have accidentally added some. Yeah, 2 extra vertices. I think those were right here because I pressed extrude once there. It's good to go and double check that every once in a while, just make sure you have no extra double vertices sitting around. But we should be able to grid fill this, and there we go. You can see that the roof mirrors the floor now. We could also copy the floor and bring it up. And I think we will make the stairs to the top floor now. To do that, we're going to put a face going across here. Again, I'll remove doubles there since there's going to be the double vertices there. And we'll connect that up with the bottom floor. In this case, the stairs are going to match up right here. Although in a lot of the houses, there's usually some sort of door or something to break that up. Like for example, there's the White House, and in the White House, there's the stairs at the bottom. Or I mean the door at the bottom of the stairs. And so we can connect these right up. And so now there's a bunch of extra faces in here that we can remove. Let's just grab some of these. Get rid of them bit by bit. Bottom's the easiest, just get rid of all those. But we don't want to remove any faces that we can see from over there. And so this is a little bit messy, and we can probably optimize it a bit more. But for the meantime, this will do. Like for example, right here, we could triangulate that and delete this face. Okay, there we go. And now I think we'll set up the top floor area. So I will actually just grab this and copy it up. Flip the normals, there we go, we got the top floor. And I'll do the same thing here. This is just another way of doing it. Doesn't really matter how you do it. And then now, let's fill in this gap here. Oops. Oh right, I didn't remove vertices yet. There we go. And we will extrude that down. So now we've got the little area in between the floors covered up. I think maybe we should do this sooner rather than later, cleaning this up. We'll just select some of these faces here. Come to think of it, there might actually be a few houses in the game that don't have this cleaned up. It's not too big of a deal. But we'll just connect some of these together. Doesn't really matter how we do it, but there we go. Although, I think one of the reasons I don't usually do that quite yet is because it makes it a little bit harder to loop cut everything. So we'll keep it as it is right now. But that is how you would clean that up if you were doing that. So let's see, for the roof, I think we'll have kind of an open area over here. And then we'll have the slanted roof style for the top area. Just to show some variety there. Show how the slanted roofs I usually do them. So same sort of thing, we'll just select the upper area. I think we'll leave this area solid. It's kind of a weird spot. And we'll move it up by 1. And so then that's because the lip area on most of the roofs, like on top of the grocery store or the top of the fire station, those are all 1 tall. Nice and easy to jump over. And then you can put some AC units or something up here. We'll bring this up 1.75 again. That for the doorway here. There we go. And I'll move it up 1. Fill in this face. And I think it's only the last 0.5 there. And then because this one we're going to have the slanted roof, we'll just delete all these faces. And we will grid fill this area. So now we've got the staircase here. Might look a little bit weird having this large corner up there as opposed to having a slant. That's up to you how you want to fill that in or not fill it in. Probably just do something similar to the ramp there. And I think we should be good to go now to add the triangular roof. So to do that, for the meantime, we're just going to grab these, bring them up a bit. I don't think there's any consistency to this really. Maybe I'll bring it up to just what looks good, depending on how much slope you want for your roof. And I'll scale those all down on the y-axis. So now I've got this slope area. And again, I'll remove doubles there. Okay, looks like we took care of that properly. And aside from it being a wonky shape, I don't think I'd actually include this as a building in the game because it looks a little bit wonky. I think we're good to start with some of the other details. Alright, okay. Maybe next we'll do the roof. Usually for the roof, I like to just create a new object, and we're going to have two versions of it. We're going to have one version that we'll use for... Oops, there we go. We're going to have one version that we use for the high detail version of the model. Like this isn't actually quite centered. Must be because there's more vertices on that side. There we go. Okay. And so the roofs are also, those are 0.5 meters tall. We'll bring that out to the edges, and this will be the low detail version. And so it's basically the same as the high detail version, just the high detail version also extends out a bit. But having it as a separate object like this makes it a little bit easier for us. So this will be the low quality roof, and we'll put this on layer 7. I like to put everything on the different layers in Blender because it makes it easier to preview between the different LODs. But I'll call this roof 1 for now. Sorry, I'm just gonna take a water. Okay, so we're gonna make a copy of this now with Shift D. Shift D is actually kind of handy. Before I'd always been doing Control C, Control V, whereas doing it with Shift D doesn't actually create more material instances or texture instances in Blender. So we'll just call this one Roof 0, since this is the high quality one. And did we delete? Yeah, we already did that. Okay. And so for this one, we'll just bring out these sides by 0.5 meters. I haven't really found a nice way of doing this precisely, bringing it down with that slope. You might be able to do it. I'm actually in the middle of the video. This is probably not the right time to be trying this, but I used this for the roundhouse, for the Russia map. And so basically you just create a new transform orientation for this. And if we... I want it to go along there. There we go. Okay, so that's perfectly aligned with that. What are the chances? Okay, so previously I would always manually do that, but it looks like this is how you would perfectly get it to match the same angle. Learn something new every day. So we'll add another one over here. And one trick is that if you click use after creation, if you're doing that a lot, it makes it a little bit faster. There we go. Okay, so now got the nice flat roof. Although also, even if you did manually do that, it wouldn't be a big deal because when we dissolve all these faces, it will probably create one polygon covering this whole area. We'll do the same thing on these axes as well. Whoops. And it looks like we've got a roof. We'll put that on layer 6. So usually how I organize my layers is I put the high quality ones on layer 6 and the low quality ones on layer 7. And then for the ones that I actually export, those go on layer 1 and 2. Usually I wouldn't be having this on layer 1, just for the meantime while we work on it. Okay. So next, let's do some of the frames for the windows. This is usually a pretty easy and kind of fun step. So I'm just going to call this frames because it's sort of the window door frame stuff. And I think by default it's 2 meters wide, so scaling it by 0.1 should get us the size we need. Yep, there we go. Okay, so these are, I snap them to the edges of all the frames like this, and then I move them 0.1 into every surface. Whoops. There we go. And then do this, do the same thing all around. And we got our door frame. So we can just make a copy of this for the top floor. We'll move it up here. And Oh, whoops. I forgot to make it actually match the width of the door, or the depth, whatever you want to call it. There we go, all centered, and then we can just remove these bottom ones here, since you can't see them. And we still need one for the garage. Oops. Okay, and then we can do the same thing for the windows. We'll just bring them over, and then we'll add the extra area to the bottom. Okay, and then we'll just copy this over for the left window. I think they're the same size. Yep. And then of course, same thing for this window. Just, oops, okay, it's not quite the right size. Okay. I think that's all the frames. Yep, looks good. And then of course all the extra faces will be taken care of when we dissolve everything. So we can bring these over to layer 6 now too. Or wait, oh yeah, that's the right one. And I think that's everything. Although maybe we'll also add a little sign to this, because that can be helpful to know as well. We're gonna add a new text object, make it 2 resolution. That's the resolution of all the signs in the vanilla game. You might want to have it a little bit higher if you have like a giant sign or something, you know, like the Hollywood Hills sign type thing. Although I saw somewhere that the Hollywood Hills sign is copyrighted, so you need a special license to use it. So if you are making a Hollywood map, that might be good to know. Okay, so now we've only got the front faces filled, and we can bring this over here. Again, like most things, I like to have it 0.1 in, 0.1 out, and we will put that somewhere above the door. We could probably snap that perfectly somewhere, but that should be okay. I suppose if we did want to perfectly align it, we could use center mode and then snap it here. Or no, that way that uses the left side of the text. There we go, perfectly centered. And just for the sake of things, we'll do the same from the top. There we go, okay. And what else is there to do? Right, railings. Like most things, I like to have any railings, or any of these little extra details about 0.1 into everything. And just as a general rule, for anything that's going to be flush with something, like if you wanted to add another wall here, I wouldn't make it a separate object like this. I would only make it a separate object if it's going to be in the middle of something. So you'll save a few polygons by doing it, and it's also easier. But if it's going to be something that's flush with the wall, like adding a new wall, I would not like do this and try and match it up or something. I'd extrude this and continue. But for the fence, where can we fit a fence in here somewhere? Maybe there's some sort of railing here. Something to do with the garage. Or we could also bring this out a bit. Maybe some sort of loading dock area. Making sure to get rid of the extra faces on the bottom. And so we'll make a new object. Again, we'll scale it down. And I think usually the railings are 1 meter off the ground, so there's 1 meter in between the top of the railing and down here. And then we just move them 0.1 in. The railings for the missile silo were so tricky to do, since that's all rotated and stuff. Fortunately, this is pretty straightforward. Usually I would have these 0.1 away from an edge, but since they're in line with the wall, I'll just center it on the wall, just make it look a little bit nicer. And how much do we end up moving it back? Sorry, I didn't keep track there. So 0.15, is that right? Okay, so we'll move this back 0.15. And we'll bring this railing over to here, put it 0.1 into the wall, and delete that face. And then here we might want to have a second railing somewhere in the middle. So we'll just find the exact middle point, again by dividing by 2. Oops. And again, the face orientation came in quite handy for the Firewatch towers, where there's those railings going along the stairs. That made it really easy to get the evenly spaced railings on the edges. Okay, and then maybe we'll have another one over here. Not really sure what the purpose of these would be, but looks cool. And we'll just call that railings. One other thing, is there a spot we could fit it in? Some of the buildings have those little counters, like where you might have a cash register or something. Those are 1.25 meters tall. I think. Yeah, 1.25 meters tall. And that's just because if they're only 1 meter tall, like the windows, it felt like it's very low, like it's by your hip or something. And so then having them 1.25 brings them up just that little bit, and then having the frame on top helps. That's one thing I'd suggest is for things like railings or banisters, having these little extra frame details there can help. So for example, if this were inside, you might want to have a similar frame to this going along the top, going into the walls a little bit. Okay, and then now that this isn't outside, we can remove those faces too. And I think we're good to go. Whoops. Okay, may as well save now. There's the first version from when I recorded this, or tested the recording a second ago. Make a new file. Demo building. And so for when you're working on these, if you intend it to be for the official game, I'd appreciate if you keep the blend files and the texture source files right next to the models and everything. So then that way, if when I'm going through the map and just double checking everything, it's pretty straightforward to go open it up, fix any weird glitches, you know, sometimes these things happen, and save it really easily. So I think the next thing to do is actually sticking a texture on this. I think, here we'll grab another building's texture. Off the top of my head, I don't remember which face is which, so we'll look that up together right now. Let's see, what's a building that has a nice texture? The medic building's pretty, or the pharmacy is pretty nice. We'll just copy these. Making texture is pretty easy, so I wouldn't worry too much about showing the intricacies of making a 4x2 texture right now. Although that is one thing I'll show you in a second. What do we call it? Demo building? There we go. Okay. Material, texture, texture source. And so a lot of the older buildings use XCF files, which are a GIMP file format, to save them. Doesn't really matter as long as there's the texture or albedo or whatever PNG. I think a lot of these are from when it was using Unity 4 as well, whereas nowadays I would suggest having your albedo texture called albedo, but it's not a big deal. I think a lot of the content I brought in from Rain, and Mookie has all these crazy names, so it's not, I've kind of given up any sort of naming convention there. I wouldn't worry too much about it. For these buildings, it doesn't really matter how it's unwrapped. We just need to be able to give each face a color. So for the meantime, we'll put them on the interior one. So then this is the tricky aspect of the textures. For the meantime, I would suggest having your texture be 4x2 for the buildings. And quite often, these extra textures in the bottom right are saved for any extra details you might have on your building. Like some of the buildings have a little bit of extra geometry included that you might want to give a color, so you can use that then. But it's important that your texture has power of 2 edge lengths. That was one thing, is some of the textures were like 3x3 or things like that for the Russia map. And so it took a little bit of time to go fix that. So just if you use a nice 4x2 texture, it also means that if in the future there's some sort of feature that maybe colors the top left pixel in each image to change the color of buildings, so maybe you have a red house, green house, blue house, they'll change colors automatically. A little bit of randomness in the world. Then it's nice and consistent because every outside wall is using the top left pixel. And I think that is true right now. All the buildings in the game, they have these 4x2 textures, and each one uses the outside wall as the top left. So we will do that first. We'll grab the outside walls, start giving them this texture. Okay, that's the outside areas, and then these little extra lip areas on the roof, we'll also make those that color. Okay, so then for a lot of the buildings, this second slot here, that's the roof color. This might be a bit odd. I don't think there's really any buildings in the game that have both the slanted roof and the top roof area, because usually I would keep a separate color for the inside floor area. In this case, it's a fine color, so we'll just stick with it. We'll make this area gray. This can actually also be a bit tricky for when you're dissolving your vertices, so we'll cover that later, or dissolving your faces, because it'll blend the texture between these, but that's pretty easy to take care of. Or at least the kind of messy way I usually do it anyway. I think the gas station, the new one for Russia, that also has a slanted roof and a roof area. I think that's an example of a case where I used one of the bottom right textures. Next up we'll do these. That's the next slot over here. This one is for all the window frames and everything. And this is another case, I think, where I used some of those colors, so we might bring this one down onto this. So the loading bay dock area might be a different color. For example, the gas stations, or the mechanic shop has green trim around the windows and then a metal trim around the garage area. Then for the interior, okay, so then this top right one, that's for all the interior walls. That's why I did it first, because it's kind of trickier to select the interior than the exterior. But we can go ahead and select all the roof and floor areas. Whoops, we should do them one at a time. The bottom left is for the roof. So we're going to put the floor in the slot here, and we'll just finish selecting all the floor areas. Just a couple extra faces here. And then the first slot is for the roof. Is that all of them? Hope I didn't miss any. Okay, I think we got everything. And maybe we'll also put these railings. We'll put those on this dark gray color, because I know that on a lot of the buildings, the railings are kind of a dark black color. Alright, okay, so then another thing, this can be kind of easy to overlook, we'll just move these out of the way, is even on the high poly version of the model that has these window frames, you can walk up close enough that your camera kind of goes into them a little bit, if you actually try. And so I like to keep these still in here, so that way you can't do something like go up close here and see someone on the roof through the edge there. So we actually keep these on the high poly version of the model. And we'll color them accordingly, because it'd be kind of weird to look through the blue trim and see a different color there. And we won't grab this one because we had the different color for it. There we go. Okay, so we got all the trim areas. And we'll grab this one too. Did we use that color? We must have. I think we missed this though. Okay, so we used everything now. That's all cleared up. All the colors are assigned. Are we missing anything? Okay, I think this is all good to go now. The other thing which you probably have to do, or what you definitely have to do for the buildings, is making a nav mesh version. And so what this basically is a sort of guide for the zombies. So I'm going to call this nav. For the asset bundles, it needs to be called nav, because if it's called nav mesh, or no wait, it has to be called nav mesh? No, yeah, it has to be called nav mesh, because the object is called nav. And otherwise it'll load the mesh rather than the actual object itself. We've got this here now. For a 1-floor building, usually I would remove all the upper floor stuff because the zombies don't need to know about it. That's why you don't see any nav meshes on the rooftops. But because this building has the second story, we'll keep that. Although I think we can get rid of the extra triangle bit up there. And the inside roof. There we go. And so this is also a separate copy of the object. I'm not sure I said that. We're not destroying the original. Another thing to help the zombies is there's these little ramps along the edges. And so these are 45 degrees. If I move it out by 5, since if you remember, we had this 5 meters down. And so we'll do that on each side. This is just that if it is placed a little bit above the ground, the zombies can still easily walk up to the building. And some of these things are, I don't know, maybe these should be actual gameplay features rather than relying on you to make some of these tweaks. But I think this can also be a useful feature. Because for example, the oil rig, there was an issue there where the zombies would actually walk off the edges of the oil rig. Like if you were flying in a helicopter, the zombies would be jumping off the edges into the water. I think I kind of hid that in the Russia trailer. I don't think anyone has any idea just how close, or how much stuff there was still to be done so close to the Russia map release. And so that was actually an issue when we were making the trailers. The zombies would walk off towards the helicopter. Or wait, why am I reading that? I don't think that's an issue. Shouldn't be an issue. The other thing is taking care of these windows. So we'll just squeeze these together and we'll move them out by a little bit. I think 0.5 works fine usually. Yeah, there we go. And so then this way, these edges all still match up with the floor, the collision's nice, and the fact that there's these little extra bits here, not a big deal. Zombies don't get stuck or anything. And this is all just a kind of a guide when it bakes the nav mesh. So now the zombies can easily, more easily go through the windows. Got the edges taken care of, and I think that's everything. We've got the whole building done. This is all good to go. The other thing you might want to do sometimes is have a separate collision mesh. And so this can be handy if you have something like some sort of complicated shape that players are going to have a hard time moving over. Like I think the bleachers at the baseball arena or the race car track, those are actually have their own collision mesh, and so you can walk up and down them smoothly. There's a lot of other objects that have it. One other case where you might want to do it is if you have a really big object like the oil rig, and for that there's those metal catwalks, and I felt it was a little bit weird when you walked on those. You would get the concrete sound, And so I actually made 2 collision meshes for that, one that had the walkways and one that was the main object. And so that way there's the 2 different collision mesh noises. It would probably be better for performance if it were made out of primitive colliders in Unity, but for the buildings it's not a big deal. A lot of the smaller things you can get away with using the primitive colliders, like if you just have a table or an umbrella or something, those are pretty easy to make out of the simple shapes. But for the building we'll stick with a mesh collider. So since we don't need the collision mesh, I think we're all good to go. So we are going to make a copy of the building and move that onto the first layer. And so this is going to be the version that we actually optimize to export. The first thing we'll do is we'll turn the sign into a mesh, and we'll just give it the same color as the window frames. And we should also, there's this feature limited dissolve. If you use this, it'll get rid of all your extra faces and everything. I don't think it's a big deal. I think Unity does a pretty good job with the text, but you never know. Same thing with the windows, pretty easy, pretty straightforward. And I guess I didn't really mention this, but I like to triangulate everything. So you just press Ctrl T when you have these weird magic polygons that aren't quads, aren't triangles. Press Ctrl T, it'll turn them into triangles. And that's actually important because I found that, not in this case because this doesn't have any collision, but especially for the collision meshes it's important because sometimes Unity can have a bit of a hard time importing those, and you'll end up with, visibly it's fine, but you'll actually have collision issues where like you're jumping through the window and you get stuck. And so I found that triangulating it manually took care of a lot of that. We got that taken care of now. And now the building. This is where it's a little bit trickier. We're going to deselect this face here. Or wait, I'll show you what it looks like if we don't do that. You can see the texture bleeds a little bit there. Or the UVs bleed. And so we will deselect that and then dissolve it. Everything else should be okay, I think. Just like to double check because you never know when you'll have like some sort of weird backwards face. That was a big issue with the Kremlin. With the Kremlin there was all kinds of extra faces created. And so as far as I know in those situations you kind of have to manually clean it up a bit. But we'll Control T that again and you can see that everything's looking nice, nice optimized mesh. And so then this is why doing the roof separately isn't a big deal. If we go and we triangulate this, we've got all the edges matching up. So when we join these together, there's not going to be any floating vertices or anything. I think that's all the building objects taken care of. So we'll just make a copy of the main building. Go down to layer 2. So this will be the low quality version. This will also be the version you collide with. So we will make a copy of the roof. Bring it over here. Oh, looks like we actually forgot to texture this. There we go. And I guess texture maybe isn't the right word because that was pretty easy. Sometimes you have to unwrap it, like if you have some sort of, like properly unwrap, if you have some sort of texture to it. But that all lines up. So then we can merge these together, Control J, and they're all one object now. Same thing with the original. There we go, all one object. And we'll just remove doubles to take care of those little extra vertices up there. And you can see there isn't too much pop-in. I don't think anybody really notices the frame pop-in or any of that. Although, whoops, we forgot to, because the railings, those look like something you should be able to climb on. Oh, let's just, oh, whoops. Oh no. Or wait, sorry, it wasn't selecting. I thought I'd accidentally merged those ones. Or join them. There we go, okay. And the railings are a little bit more visible from a distance too, so it's maybe important to include them. And that's because this is the collision mesh. You can optimize this a bit. I mean, like for example, for the collision mesh, you can see here, there's this extra face here, as well as, well, I suppose you wouldn't do that. For the most part, it's fine though. Usually you can use the lower detail version as the collision mesh. And then lastly, we will do the nav mesh too. Move that over here. And, oh, right. Usually with objects that have the same name, I'll just call it nav mesh source, something like that. And for this one, I mean, since it's a collision, it doesn't really matter if the UVs get mixed up like that. Looks like it should be fine for zombies to walk on though. All good to go. And we just need to rename these because we don't want them to be called building.001, 002. Okay. So now we'll go ahead and save. Probably should have been saving more. Usually I like spam save. Like in real life I'll be writing and my finger does the Control S motion. Doing a big page or something. Model 0 is kind of a weird name. I really only stick with it because that's what everything else is called, which also compounds the problem. Maybe we'll just write a script or something to rename them all at some point, like what's this, demo building underscore LOD underscore 0, something like that. But for the meantime, they're all called Model 0, Model 1, Model 2 if there is one. I think you can go up to like 3 before Unturned stops checking for it. Oh, and I don't think I said it, but it's important to have this selected objects box checked in order to export them to different FBXs. If we go in Unity now, we've got all these different objects. Need to have imported all right. I just have it to automatically turn off import materials. I don't find it particularly useful, and we already had this set up anyway. I just replaced that there because I wasn't sure if I'd already done that, since otherwise I'd be referring to the pharmacist texture. So now we'll go down here and, or actually I'll set this up from scratch. Hopefully I remember all the steps. So we'll make a new object, we'll call this object, and maybe put it somewhere nice. If it's some big number, you'll have floating point issues, which you might be scratching your head over. Put this on the large layer, and we'll add our new objects. By default, sometimes it likes to scale it up to 100. Probably some sort of import setting you can do to fix that up. Although now it looks like it's quite small. Just double check that. Okay, looks like we have quite the miniature house here. I think that's because I exported it with the new settings. Usually I'm using an older version of the file so it exports properly, but you can always increase the file scale there so that it doesn't need to be scaled up here. So I'm just gonna have some bit more water. Okay, so we'll assign the material, get rid of the animation. That's one thing I see sometimes on custom objects, is having the animation component. I'm not sure whether it has any impact without any animations attached, but regardless, there is still some overhead from having an extra component. Oh, right, we should also disable animations on these. No animation. Oh, import animation, no. Okay, I must have some sort of script set up that automatically sets it to legacy. I have a few imported things set up like that, and we also need to change this to 100. One thing also is setting the normals and tangents. Usually I like to have that set to automatic. I have it set to 45 here. I used to have that manually forced so that it would just automatically set it to 45, but for some of the newer objects like the new tree models, well, not really new, this was a couple months ago, but they were updated to have some modified normals that the lighting's a little bit nicer, and so it's manual now. Other than that, I think we're all good to go. Okay. Next up, we'll put these on the right layer, a large layer there, and we'll set up a LOD group. For the buildings, I like to have like 123. I think that works pretty well overall. And so we'll put model 0 here, model 1 there. There we go, seems to be a pretty good distance. That's also on the lowest graphics setting, so if you had a high graphics setting, it'd be quite a bit further away from that. Right, okay, looks to be properly set up. Now I'll add our mesh collider. We'll just use the low detail version of the model. Although, right, these should not be rotated. There we go. That's one thing that's kind of annoying about Blender to Unity, is for some reason it's the wrong orientation. I think it's something that's been on Unity's, on one of those like suggestions lists and whatnot for ages, so there's not much hope of it being taken care of at this point. We've got that all lined up now. Yeah, Unturned just rotates it -90 on the x-axis, which is kind of hacky, but for the meantime it works. And so then I actually included these files now. They're in the sources, or maybe it's the examples folder. You can import them to get all the different materials the game has. You probably want to use the static ones. Dynamic is just disables the bullet impacts. I might improve on that a little bit in the future so that the bullet impacts actually stick with the moving objects, but for now it just disables them. It only plays the sound. And so for this building we'll probably use something like the tile static mesh, or what's it called? Physics material, that's what it's called. Okay, so to make the collider version, this is what's loaded by the server. We'll just get rid of all these extra visuals, and this will be the version that the server loads. And we will make another one for what the zombies use in the editor. And this needs to be on the nav mesh later. There we go. And right, this completely skipped my mind because this is a pretty recent addition, but there's a new feature where you can see a lot of these buildings from much further away. And so to set that up, we just need another version of the object called Skybox. So we'll do that really quickly. This only takes a second. I'd very much, or if this isn't official content, I'd kind of require this to be done, having this version of the object. Because it really does look nice being able to have a nice long view distance. Here, we'll get this off the layer so we can more easily see it. And right, this was this layer, I think. There we go. So you can see they look pretty similar, just this other one's much lower detail. Okay, there we go. And one thing you can do to speed things up a bit is, rather than re-importing all those settings, we can just make a copy of one of these, call it Skybox, and then overwrite it. And I think we can just drag that on. Yeah, there we go. Give it the material, and we're all good to go. We can see the low detail version right there. Where's the roof? Yeah, okay. So now we will go and create the actual bundle. So for me, these are all in the resources folder. Just makes it a little bit quicker. Made that change about a year ago now, probably even longer. It used to just be the asset bundles like what you're probably using at this point. And so this should all be exactly the same, just it's in the resources folder for me. We call it demo folder. Okay, there we go. Oops. Guess you can't make multiple prefabs at the same time. And I'll just double check. Right, okay, so the only thing we have left to do is the slots. And so these are basically some assistant colliders that will help the game know where to put the snapping points for all the little barricades and windows and everything. So when you have your door out and you walk up to the door, it'll automatically just appear in the middle there. We'll create a new object, slots. I think usually this is on the logic layer. Oh, we could also do transform copy component on it. And so then this is basically just a bunch of box colliders. We'll get rid of those. And they're all named what you would expect, or come to think of it, they're not. They're all weird names, so we'll go through all these. We put on the logic layer and rotate them. Right. Okay, that looks right. The size, like we were saying earlier, the doors are 2.5 meters wide and 2.75 meters tall. It's not a big deal if this is all slightly off by a bit. I mean, because the frame kind of hides it. I wouldn't worry too much about lining it up perfectly. We can do this pretty quickly. Then of course this one was 4 by 3.75. Again, these measurements are in the objects documentation. I'm gonna go back and look. I think for the garage it's called gate to snap into them. And we'll just double check it's in the center-ish. And these aren't very precise. They probably should be, but for the meantime they're not. If anybody knows fortunately I don't really have to look at this since there's the in-game level editor. Makes it so I can kind of customize this sort of thing. But I don't really like how Unity adds the 1 or the number when you make a duplicate. If anybody knows a way to get rid of that, if you let me know, that'd be awesome. For the windows, it doesn't really matter the size. It's really just this big plane that it knows that you can place something there. So if it stretches outside the window a little bit, it's not a big deal. Just matters that it's called slot. Slot for a barricade. Or a fortification. I think that's what they're called. The things you can put in windows. Right, okay. So we got all that taken care of. We can put that in there. And there we go. Okay, so we've got all our stuff set up. If you're using the asset bundler tool, you want to go bundle this now. I'd really recommend using my version. I know there's a bunch of tools out there, but this is guaranteed to work. I mean, I use this for ages. I still use this for the terrain and things like that still use the asset bundles. It's pretty quick. Right. The other thing that I was just trying to remember is for when it's actually included in the map, assuming your map is accepted into the game officially, it's really handy if you follow the same folder structure, because it means that when I go to import it, I can just import a Unity package version and it'll all be in here just the same way as all this is. Just to a bit better explain what I mean, these are some of the objects, well, these are the objects Mookie made, although I don't think the bakery is in the game. But here's, for example, the mansion. And so they're in a folder called Mookie in the objects folder. And then I also have another folder up here in the objects folder called Mookie as well. And so then if you just follow the same sort of folder structure, it doesn't really matter what subfolders you have, whether you have buildings folder or whatever, just as long as I can import the Unity package. So just to show you how you do that, if we select both of these, so we have both the sources and the bundles selected, we can go here and click export package. And this will gather all the different files so that we can export them easily. And then on my end, I would just import it and it would put them in all the same places, make it super easy. So I think the only thing remaining is to actually set up the bundle for it. Fortunately, I have this nice IDs list. This isn't really needed anymore because as part of this update, just see if we can find the bottom. As part of this update, it was changed so that it goes by file names rather than the IDs, but still I'll probably give everything an ID just as the backup because it makes it so that if you rename the file, it'll adjust the level file rather than deleting it. So this is called demo building. Let's see, we'll just copy. Airport's probably okay. Where did that go? Some people are can be a little bit confused about why there's this new object in the editor called demo building. $735. Right, okay, so then this is for the interior LOD system. And so usually you're fine to just put LOD mesh. This is for most objects like a house. If your building has a little upstairs area, like how, if we can just grab the airport, you can see there's the lip around the edge. And so usually there might be something like an AC unit up here. And so usually for this sort of buildings, I like to offset it down a little bit. In this case, you can see Z is the up axis. So moving it down will make it so that this upper area, which is 1 meter tall, the AC won't get cold with the interior. So that way when you're backing up, the lounge chairs and stuff inside will disappear, but not the little extra details on the roof, because that'd look weird if those extra things that you can see from further away disappeared like that. In this case, because we do have the extra roof space up top, I think we'll probably disable this. Although we could also just as easily match it up so that it matched up with the inside area. I think what you might want to do on this sort of model. Wait, do I have it open twice? I do. Sorry about that. This is the one where we had the skybox. You might want to change it so that it only covers this area back to here and to the roof here. But I wouldn't say it's too big of a deal. Another way you can do that is if you set it to LOD area. There's another system for objects like the crane, where if we look here, what's it called? I did it for the crane, but maybe I didn't. It is. Alright, hopefully I'll edit this out. Maybe I also might just be forgetting how this own system works. Be another object that has. Oh, these towers definitely do. Oh yeah, here we go. So we got this object called occlusion. And just because Unity had this nice occlusion area object, it's not actually using Unity's occlusion system, just because it was conveniently named. So you add that and you just cover up the inside areas. And so what this does is, because there's usually the ladder leading up to it, you would be able to back up and any objects inside would disappear, but the ladder wouldn't. Because usually you don't really notice those sorts of things through the windows. So that should be good. We're all good to go. There are a couple other other options for objects you might want to check out. Some of that's in the documentation, some of it I don't think I documented yet. Like for example, there's some options for the charts where you can choose the color it shows up on the charts. But I doubt you'd have to be worrying about that, because that's only for things like bridges. We'll just load up Russia here. It actually finishes loading. Yep, okay. Demo building, there we go. We got it in game, looking good, working properly. All the LEDs and stuff is working. You can see when we get far away, the skybox is working as well. You probably also want to just double check in game that all the slots are lined up and that so that you can snap everything in. And that I'm actually looking at this corner is also kind of dumb. Looks pretty weird. I don't think I'd actually do this for a real building, It was really just for the purposes of showing how I would set up stairs and objects like that. Not to mention, well, the whole building in general looks weird. I hope nobody uses this in their actual maps, but I think I'll still leave it in so you can double check it. And I think I'll also include the files for it too. So I'll just show you how we might set that up right now. We would just go to demo building here, and we would select it down here as well. Basically just what we did earlier, export the package. And because we already have the physics set up with that physics bundle, I won't include those, but so what this will let you do is if you want to open it up, you can go check out all the files that we made. There we go. And so then I assume you already know how to import these, but you just go to import custom package. And I think that's it. I hope you have a nice day. Thanks for watching. I hope this was useful. Definitely if you have any questions about any of this, feel free to leave a comment or email or whatever. And regardless of whether I respond, if it's something that I think is confusing, I should take care of it and I'll update the guide or maybe add some sort of annotation to the video to help clear things up. But yeah, have a nice day. I'll see you later.